So how many African cichlids can you keep in a 10-gallon tank? Hey fish friends, how's everyone doing? Hope you're doing well. As you can tell by the title, I am talking about keeping African cichlids in a small tank. Now if we're talking about these guys, the answer is 0. Now I know you're going to say, no wait a minute Zenzo, we've seen your fish room, we know that you keep African cichlids in 10 and 20 gallon tanks. And that is true, but you have to realize that those are special circumstances, and those are not fish that I'm keeping long term. So for the tanks downstairs, yes I do have African cichlids in 10 gallon and 20 gallon tanks, but those are for the most part baby fish. They're fry or they're juveniles and they're very small and they're growing out. In addition, I am doing high volume and high frequency water changes down there. So you realize that down there I'm doing water changes every 3 to 4 days, right around 75 to 80% in all of those tanks. So they are getting high volume water changes. I'm very on top of the water parameters, and it's also a breeding program. So they are not going to be there long term. They are only kept in those smaller tanks until they get large enough to move to a larger tank, and then eventually they go off to the stores to be sold. So, and then yes, I do have a couple of adults in smaller tanks down in the fish room. Specifically, I have one of my males down there. He's in a smaller tank, and I have right now I've got a female in another tank. And they are in a tank by themselves, and again, they get the same treatment as far as high volume water changes, excellent water parameters, and those are only temporary situations. So right now, the male is in the small tank because I'm giving the females a break, so they don't have to, breed and have eggs and fry in their mouths right now. And then the other female that's in the other tank, she is getting some weight back on her because she was holding fish in her mouth for about 3 weeks. So the answer to the question is, if you're talking about a Lake Malawi fish, such as a peacock or an mbuna, you really don't want to keep them in a 10 or a 20 gallon tank. Now, if it's temporary, if it's a hospital tank, absolutely. If it's a quarantine tank, absolutely. If you have a breeding program and you're growing out fry and juveniles, that's fine, as long as you're up on top of cleaning the water and doing high volume water changes, etc. So if it's a situation where you just need to put a fish, in a tank for a couple of months to, fatten them up or let them heal, yeah, that's perfectly fine to have them in a smaller tank. What I'm talking about is keeping fish in a small tank as your display tank to enjoy and let them live their lives. So the answer is no. You're not going to keep any of these fish in a 10 or 20 gallon tank because it's just not enough water volume for them to, live comfortably for a lengthy period of time, and it's not enough water volume and space for them to swim about and be happy and swim freely. However, there is an African cichlid that I'm going to talk about today that you can keep in a 10-gallon tank. And they happen to be right behind me in this 60-gallon tank. So I've got a whole bunch of them in here right now. I will take a video for you to see them up close so that you can see how they interact with one another, see how they live in their shells, and how they spawn and have baby fish. So these are my Neolamprologus Multifaciatus, also called multis for short, and also shellies because they are a shell-dwelling cichlid. So what they do is they inhabit the bottom part of your tank, and you want to make sure that you have some empty shells for them to use for their homes. And you can also use other things like smaller PVC elbows with end caps, etc. But these fish range from 1 inch to about 1 3/4 inches for the largest of the males. And if you have good water parameters, they will spawn. So as you can see here, I have fry all over the place. You can see down there below, you can see swimming in and out of the shells, and you can see the big males kind of swimming back and forth, kind of patrolling their own little area, keeping their harem tight, and you can see the females also protecting the shellies. So in addition to these fish, and as you know, these are the Neolamprologus Multifaciatus, there are other small cichlids that you can keep in a 10-gallon tank. But preferably like a 20 gallon or 20 long would be even better for these fish because they like to be along on the bottom of the tank. So it's more about floor space than it is, water volume. So in addition to these, you can also do the Cichlids, which is very similar to the Multifaciatus. They just have different bands that go past their gill plates up to their head, but very similar color patterns. And there are some other smaller lake tanganic and shell dwellers that would also do well in a 10 or 20 gallon tank. If you do want to learn more about African cichlids and what size tanks that they can be kept in, watch this video right here. And if you want to learn more about the Neolamprologus Multifaciatus, watch that video over there. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.